Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am an adrenal fatigue recovery ninja, and I want to welcome you back to another edition of your Adrenal Fix. It's been a while since we've had a Tuesday night Facebook Live session, and I'm really excited to be doing this today. I hope you guys are getting ready for the holiday season. I hope you're not too stressed out getting last minute gifts. These times can be very, very stressful. And you can get into overwhelm. And so today what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to you about the role of hormone balancing and adrenal fatigue. Because a lot of the people that I work with and I consult with and I do initial troubleshooting sessions with, they're on bioidentical hormones. And I'm definitely not against bioidentical hormones. I am against synthetic hormones because I think that ultimately the synthetic hormone is causing more problems than it's trying to fix. But the bioidentical hormones, there's a time and a place for that. But here's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about balancing your hormones. And what I think is that you're not gonna outsmart the body. And when you're not gonna outsmart the body, that means that you sort of, pull somewhere and something else falls out, and then you push somewhere else, something else falls in. And I think as a result of all of that, you start to try to play God in a way, and the body really needs the proper nutrients. Look at all those loves and hearts. I'm guessing that's you, Sarah. I hope that's you. I hope you're doing well, but that makes me feel happy that you're giving me these hearts. So anyways, what I wanted to do is, like I said, there is a time and a place for doing hormones and having hormone replacement and doing bioidenticals. But as long as you know specifically why and when and how and what you're trying to do, what's the outcome of what you're trying to do. So a couple of the things that I wanted to discuss today were why MDs don't believe in adrenal fatigue. We're still there. I mean, I can't believe we're in the year 2018 almost, and they still are fighting like a sinking ship, going down with the ship. Now, while adrenal fatigue may not necessarily be the adrenals are tired and they can't produce any more hormones, they are insufficient. And there's a lot of feedback loops that are being broken. Hormones aren't being produced optimally. They're not being utilized. The circadian rhythm is off. And then you have sort of this escape problem where it goes out of control. And so whether you want to call it adrenal fatigue, or you want to call it insufficiency, or you want to call it chronic fatigue, to me, it doesn't matter. It comes down to fixing the problem. And so I have this book here, and it's called Safe Uses of Cortisol. And it was originally published in 1990. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, because I said the ACTH test is a bogus test. And in this book, it actually talks about that the ranges, the normal ranges that they use for the ACTH test. So for you, those of you who don't know what the ACTH test is we have the hypothalamus, and it releases CRH. And it tells the pituitary, hey, go tell the adrenals that they need to produce some stress hormones because we're under stress here. So then the pituitary releases ACTH, and that causes the adrenals to make of things cortisol or aldosterone. And so what we do is we do what's called an ACTH test, which means let's give the patient this, and then we can check to see if they are having a normal cortisol response. However, when they originally did these tests, they didn't test people to compare your results to if you were getting tested against people that were actually sick and that actually had Addison's. So when you are normal, and you are normal compared to the other guy that was normal, and you're not sicker than that guy, then you're told that you're normal. I don't know how you can do a baseline on a non-sick population and then compare you to that non-sick population, saying that you mustn't be sick because you're not sicker than them. You can still have problems. and they may not have been super healthy to begin with either. Or they could have been really healthy and you're really healthy, but the bottom line is you can't compare yourself to a population that wasn't deemed sick. So here's what they said here. It is important to be aware that the test results that fall within the normal range do not rule out the possibility, and this is made by William McJeffries, and he's an MD. It can't rule out the possibility that a patient might have mild adrenal deficiency. So mild adrenal deficiency doesn't exist in the medical arena. It's either black or white, yes or no, no shades of gray. So there is no term mild. You're either this or you're either that. May have a mild adrenal deficiency since the normal ranges was probably attained from a group of people who do not have classical Addison's disease or hypopituitarism or any other known physical disorders, and is a rather broad test. So there's more that goes into that, but this is pretty fascinating reading because it does talk about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater and saying just because you are having a normal ACTH test doesn't mean that you don't have a mild adrenal problem. And that's only one value. There's so many other things that go on. There's feedback loops. It's whether this is a good hormone, whether it gets into the cell. I mean, there's so many things that could possibly go wrong. So I think it's a BS test number one. So that leads us down to what tests are good tests to do. And one of the tests that we're hearing a lot about is the Dutch test. And so what is the Dutch test? The Dutch test is, I had an example here. So the Dutch test is basically, it's a dipstick test. And what do I mean by dipstick? So you take 4 readings throughout the day. You take your dinner time reading, you pee into a cup, you drop the dried sample or you drop the paper in there and you let it dry. So that's going to be your dinner time sample. Then you're going to do it at bedtime. Then you're going to do it when you first wake up in the morning. Then you're going to do it 2 hours later. And if you happen to wake up in the middle of the night, you're going to do it at that 5th time. What do I love about that? I love about that the fact that it's looking at your circadian rhythm. So when you look at an ACTH test and they do it in the morning, or better yet, you look at just a blood test and you look at cortisol in the morning, they are looking at it at one time of the day. And when they look at it at one time of the day, you're not getting a true reading of what your circadian rhythm is doing throughout the day. So you may be crashing, as soon as you wake up and may be spent for the rest of the day, or your feedback loops may be broken and they're opposite where they're low at, in the morning and they're high at night. So suffice it to say, you could have a broken feedback loop. On top of that, your shift may be different than my shift. I may be working 3rd nights or a 3rd shift, and my dinner time is different than your dinner time. So what's great about this test is you can look at the timing of your day, what time you have your dinner, what time you go to your bed, what time you wake up, and 2 hours later. I mean, it's pretty fascinating that you can do that. The other thing that's really great about it is it looks at the metabolites. So I wanted to get into sort of the breakdown of the hormones. And I don't want to make this too confusing, but basically it all starts with cholesterol. So I had a gentleman that came in today and he told me his cholesterol wasn't too bad. And so his cholesterol was 156. So I asked him, what would not bad at all be to you? And he didn't really answer. But the thing is that there is a problem of having too low cholesterol. And he's on statin, or actually couldn't take statin, so he's on other cholesterol lowering medications. But it's gotten to the point where originally, I believe in 1989, the acceptable ranges for cholesterol were 330. And then all of a sudden overnight, a company comes out and it patents a statin and it says, hey, let's make it 230. So now all of a sudden overnight, it's 230. And now if you look at it, it's actually 200. It's less than 200, and it's even going less than 199. And the lower it is, like, oh, it's at 140, that's awesome. Or if we can get it even lower than 140, that's awesome. Because guess what? You got to go on medication to keep it low. But no one is telling you that cholesterol is the prerequisite for all your hormones, for your estrogen, your progesterone, your thyroid hormone, your cortisol, your libido, your brain function, your cell membranes. All of the things that need healthy fats need cholesterol. So if you're not even absorbing your cholesterol and you're taking a bioidentical hormone, you're way down here. You're way down here. How are you going to fix way up here? So now why would you have a cholesterol absorption problem? Well, number one, you're taking too much cholesterol lowering medication. Number two, potentially there is a liver problem. There's a bile problem. I've done talks about this before where if you have a liver problem or a bile problem and you're not absorbing your healthy fats, then you are not able to repair your cell membranes. You're not able to make healthy nerves. You're not able to make the prerequisites for hormones. And fat's the bad guy. And, there's a great book. It's called The Big Fat Lie. And it really talks about how, it was really a big fat lie about how fats were the bad guy and how carbohydrates were the good guy. And ultimately, we have the American Heart Association and the American Diabetes Association that are starting to come on board now and know that, hey, saturated fats weren't the bad guys. The carbs were the bad guys, and having too much of them and not having enough fat and having low cholesterol is really causing a huge amount of problems. But guess what? You can just go on bioidentical hormones and fix that. Maybe not, because we're not fixing upstream from that. You're not going to fix that. So absorbing healthy fats, eating healthy fats, avocados, seeds, nuts, coconut oils, MCTs, even bone broths. If you eat animal fats, it's nice to have marbled fats in those meats. If you're eating dairy, whole fat-based yogurts with no sugar added, you could hardly find those, but they're coming back now. And really eating good, healthy fats is going to help with your cholesterol production. So what's back to the Dutch test? Why is the Dutch test so good? Well, what it does is it looks at your metabolites for progesterone. It looks at your metabolites for cortisol. When I say metabolites, meaning the different products that it turns into, it looks at your DHEA and the three things that make up DHEA. It looks at your estrogens and your phase 1 and your phase 2 estrogen, which means how well do you break down estrogen. Saliva tests don't tell you that. Saliva tests tell you the free fraction of the hormone, which is good because ultimately I want to know how much is available to be utilized. But because the free fraction of the hormone only represents 1% of the total amount, you can make a lot of false conclusions, and I have. And what happens is, let's say with cortisol, in the Dutch test, we look at your free cortisol and we look at your metabolized cortisol. So this means how much do you have in your wallet at any one time to spend? This means how much did you spend at the end of the day total? So if I have a really low free cortisol, it doesn't necessarily mean I have a really low metabolized cortisol, and vice versa. If I have a really high free cortisol, how much I have in my wallet at any one time, doesn't necessarily mean I spent a lot in the day. I could have all the money in my wallet, and if I have an unintended expense, I'm going to go bankrupt. And that happens a lot. And we make false conclusions on a value that represents 1 to 2% when it's not representing 99 to 100% of the whole. And that's why a saliva test can make you go awry. And I've done that. I'll admit that I've done that, where I've had free cortisol levels come back through the roof, and I'll give them stuff to lower their cortisol. And you'll tend to hear of phosphatidylserine or Serifos to lower cortisol. But when you see the metabolized cortisol, it's really low. So that person has high free cortisol. There's a lot of it being available, but not a lot of it's being utilized. What's one reason that could happen? Well, we can have a lot of free radical damage. Hey, Margaret, I hope you're doing well. Happy holidays, and hope everything's going well. So one of the reasons is you can have oxidized cell membranes because of free radical damage, and the cortisol is not able to be bound to the cell membrane and taken in. It's kind of like insulin resistance. Another reason is because thyroid hormone may not be doing very well, and there's no thyroid hormone getting inside the cell. The metabolism of the cell is slowing down, and it's not able to break down the free cortisol that's available, and you're not producing a lot to get you through the day, so you're burnt out but before the day even starts. Hi Robin, hope you're well down under. So those are different reasons why you can have really high free cortisol and low metabolized cortisol, and the saliva test is not going to tell you about that. That's why we like to do the Dutch test. The other great thing about the Dutch test is it tells me about how well do I break down, or how well do you break down estrogen. I've said many times that it's kind of a cruel thing that when you have inflammation, you have insulin resistance, you have infections, you have trauma, and you're a female, then ultimately you're going to aromatize a lot of your hormones. And what that means is, instead of DHEA and testosterone going down the estrogen pathway, it's going to go down the testosterone pathway. And that's where we tend to see women that have PCOS, they have acne, they have abnormal hair growth or hair loss, or they're irritable or they're angry. And you're not going to see that in a saliva test. And vice versa for men. When we have insulin resistance, infections, injuries, the testosterone is not going to go down the pathway of breaking testosterone down. It's going to go down the estrogenic pathway, and that's where we see men that have, they go to a movie, they get very emotional, they may cry, they have gynecomastia with maybe some man boobs, or they just feel weak, they don't feel strong. And that the Dutch test is going to tell us about that. The Dutch test is really great. The other last thing that I would say about the Dutch test is it looks at your phase 1 and phase 2 of metabolism. So what does that mean? It means that it tells us where the breakdown is occurring. So if I see a genetic test and I see that you have COMT, or you have MTR, or MTHFR, or whatever it may be, all of those things are really going to slow down your phase 2 of metabolism. And we see this a lot on the Dutch test, where your phase 1 is really fast. You're bringing a lot of garbage to the curb, but your phase 2 is really slow, and the garbage men are taking it away from the curb. And as a result, it causes a lot of junking up of your cell membranes, which are already being oxidized because of inflammation in the body. So that's really huge. So I know I'm rifling through this, but what tests do? I do both. I do both saliva and I do the urine, because, and we're not talking about a total urine. I want to make that clear. A lot of patients will say, well, can't I just go to my doctor and ask them to do a urine test? They do urine cortisol tests. That's a 24-hour collection. So basically what you're doing is you're peeing into a jar, you put that into the fridge, you pee into the jar again, might as well shake it up, you put it in the fridge, pee into the jar, shake it up again, put it into the fridge. How are you seeing your circadian rhythms in there? Unless you're kind of like, you know, picking it apart and saying, okay, this one was at this time. I mean, you just can't do that. So A, you can't do that. B, Dutch right now, as far as I know, Precision Analytical, I know there's another one. These are the only ones that are actually doing these specific tests. So I definitely do that, but I also do saliva tests so that I can look at the circadian rhythm and I can see some feedback loop problems that I may not be seeing with the Dutch test, because they don't do such a good feedback loop problem. But I take it one step more, and I'll also do a blood test. And the reason I'll do a blood test is not because I want to look at your cortisol levels, but I want to look at your other pituitary hormone levels, the thing that's causing this to not work properly. So what are those things? Those are LH, FSH, stuff like that, ADH. These are going to be things that are going to cause your pituitary to be overworked, and impact the adrenals as well. And it gives us a treatment protocol as to what to do. And that's a really important point, meaning don't do a test if it's not going to give you some information as to what you're going to do about it. And that's why the Dutch test is so great, because you can see, hey, am I aromatizing? Is my phase 1 too slow? Am I getting enough DHEA? A lot of the times we can do balance the hormones by giving us some pregnenolone. I've made a mess out of this, but giving us pregnenolone. And that pregnenolone would ultimately be better than those synthetic hormones potentially, because now your body can decide what to do with it. And a lot of the times what happens is the reason why these estrogen levels were low in the first place is because we're totally stressed out, and all of the pregnenolone is going down this pathway to make cortisol. But why don't we focus on replenishing higher up in the cup and then opening this up so that it can come back down the normal pathway and settle down your stress response and actually try to fix the cause of the problem. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. I talked to a gentleman today, and he's doing testosterone. He's feeling a little bit better, but he's not addressing his anxiety. He's not addressing his fact that he can't sleep. He's not addressing his energy levels. He's not addressing his stress response. He's not addressing his emotional states and the way he thinks about the world. He's not addressing his dietary habits. I mean, it's pretty naive and arrogant to think, okay, you know what, Mary? I'm just going to give you estrogen and progesterone, and voila, I'm going to swing a magic wand and fix all the stressors and the heavy metals and the toxic exposures and the emotional drain and the post-traumatic stuff and the infection that you have, and I'm just going to fix that, and I'm going to put you on a death sentence or a life sentence and say, you are hereby summoned to be on estrogen for the rest of your life. And I can't tell you how many people I've worked with that have had DHEA of 100 milligrams per day, and I ask them, like, how like, I'll put them on anywhere between 30 to 60 for 2 months, and I'll do a before and after test. So I'm like, all right, let me take a look at your after test. What has it improved? What do you mean after test? You know those things that you did the first time? You didn't do it the first time either. You were just put on this. I mean, there's a lot of people, put your hand up, that have been put on hormones without looking at these tests in the first place. Forget the after test. There's no before test. There has to be a before and after test. And if the after is improving and I'm now fixing the main problem, I've jump-started my body to give it a little bit of a supplement. A supplement means to give you a little extra while you're fixing the problem. A supplement is not a permanent. If you started going to the drugstore or the pharmacy or the Whole Food store to buy supplements that were called permanents, they would be called permanents. They're called supplements. They're a supplement for a reason. The other test that I like to do with all my patients is a GI map test. So what is a GI map test? A GI map test is going to look at the pathogens in your gut. And I'd be willing to bet that if you're watching this video and you're dealing with a stress response that's chronic, it's secondary to infection. So when I say infections, I'm talking about viruses, parasites, candida, Lyme, mold, mycotoxins, yeast, parasites, biofilms, all of the above. And the reason that is because you live in a society. In fact, I was listening to a lecture the other day and was talking about that 20% of our own gene card, when we aren't methylating very well, is programmed for its own inherent viruses. You're not even getting them from the external. You're getting them internally. You're turning on the expression of your own viruses, and you're not able to turn them off. And now you have these pathogens that are in the gut that are draining the immune system, that are causing your inflammation to continue to go on unabated. And you got to think about, what do the adrenals do? The adrenals settle inflammation. They maintain your electrolyte balance, and they give you energy. And that's what I really wanted to talk to you about, your electrolyte balance. So one of the things that I'd be willing to say, I really made a mess of this, but one of the things that I would be willing to say is that the majority of you guys, and even me, are dehydrated. So you know, if I weigh 175, then I should be weighing, or I should be at least doing 87.5, which is half of that, ounces of good quality water every day. How much of you guys are doing that? So if you weigh 200, how many of you are drinking 100 ounces of water every day? Or if you weigh 125, how much are you drinking 67 ounces of water every day? Now I'm going to put another, there's a lot of controversy on this, but I really believe that this is very, very valid. Let's say you have coffee, you love coffee. For every 8 ounces of coffee, you need to add another 32 ounces of water. So you guys are having your big gulps of coffee. There's about, let's say there's probably about 50 ounces of coffee in there. Times that by, divide 50 by 8 is about 6. 6 times 32, 6 times 40, another 240 ounces plus your ounces of water, half your body weight. And a lot of you aren't doing that. And the other thing is, we need good quality sodium. Not like rock sodium or sodium that's been heated to 1100 degrees. Like it really makes me mad. I have this little prop where, I go to like the fresh market or the not so fresh market, and I get an avocado, and they give me a knife and a fork and a spoon, and they give me this crap. I mean, I'm becoming completely neurotic here now, where I know too much for my own good, and I know they're heating this up, and they're caking it, and they're using copper screens or nickel screens to dry it, so now it's adulterated. What I like is the pink salt. And I gotta admit, I bring it now with me wherever I go, because I want to put a little bit of salt on there. But you know what, if you have a child that's dealing with gut bugs and is not doing well, all you need to do is give them a little extra healthy pink salt. But we've been told, don't do salt, it's bad for your cardiovascular problem, it's bad for hypertension, and you threw the baby out with the bathwater. And when you sweat and you're working and you're doing, and you're not drinking half your body weight in water, and you're drinking a bunch of coffee, and you're not making up for the amount that you're losing, and you're not even getting hydrochloric acid, there's no wonder why that hydrochloric acid and that sodium is deficient, and you can't make enough stomach acid. And when I say hydrochloric acid, I mean chloride from the salt. You're not getting the chloride or the pink salt components that's going to help with your digestive enzymes and your hydrochloric acid. Now all of a sudden you have all these gut bugs that you can't get and eliminate, and you're causing your inflammation to go crazy. You're causing your DHEA to not go down into estrogen. You're causing it to go into cortisol. Your cells are oxidized, so you're not making a lot of cortisol, but your free cortisol levels are high, and you're just going on progesterone and estrogen. It's a huge, huge problem. So I know I sort of rattled off there and talked a lot about that, but I'm hoping that you guys got a lot out of that, because there is a lot in there. The other test that I would say that's invaluable is the organic acid test. So the organic acid test looks at candida and bacteria growth. It looks at oxalates. It looks at your mitochondrial health, if you're utilizing too much glucose as a way to produce energy, if you're not absorbing your amino acids. It looks at how well you utilize fats as a healthy fuel, what your neurotransmitters are doing, how are your detoxification pathways, and what's going on with your absorption of your amino acids. So those three tests together, plus a Dutch test, saliva test, and a blood test, pretty much has it covered. And then on top of that, doing a genetic test to see where all of these breakdown components are susceptible. There's no guessing, and there's before and afters. And this thing about adrenal fatigue takes 2 years to fix, and it can't be fixed. That's part of the problem, is having that mindset where you can't fix it too. So hopefully that was helpful. I know I kind of went on a tangent there, but I hope you guys got a lot of value out of that. So if you guys want to ask me a question, let me know right now. So I can see here, bring them on camera. Hi, Sue. Sue, you and I still have to sit and get down and get to work on you. It's sad the majority of the so-called healthcare professionals don't even know how the human body works. I can't see the rest of what you said there, but I would agree. It's very frustrating. Everyone is an individual. People just don't get that. It's true. But it's easier to just lump you into a group of people, and insurance, in my opinion, is the real villain in this. And it's all about corporate dollars. I mean, I watched a 60 Minutes the other day about the drug problems with the narcotics and the painkillers, and that stuff is just sickening. I feel really terrible about that. But I agree with you, Sarah. By the way, Joel, you are looking great, healthy and strong. Oh, thank you. I've been busting my butt working out. I really have. I've been working out like a fiend because I was putting so much into helping you guys that I wasn't helping myself. And now I just have to learn how to balance. So I think this morning was the first time I had a break in a couple weeks. Orly, hi Orly, I hope you're doing well. Just had a complete lipid test today. Good. Those Boston tests are really good, like the small lipoprotein A's. I like to look at those, especially if I'm deciding if we're going to help you get with a ketogenic diet. It's the idea, it's the concept that we want. It's not so much you're like you said earlier, like everyone's an individual. You're not just going to go in and do keto and say, hey, you have to do it. You have to figure it out and see if it works for you. Hi, Margaret. I hope you're doing well. Hi, Robin again. Carrie, I hope you replay this. I definitely will be replaying this. And blood. Then we have Rosberg developments. I take pregnenolone for stage 3. Adrenal fatigue relaxes me, but I get confusions, disorientation still. So again, remember, there's a lot of mechanisms going on here. I don't like staging adrenal fatigue because I think it's nice and it's clean and it's good for making you feel like you're got a handle on this. But if you still have unidentified infections and it's creating a lot of free radicals and you're creating a lot of neurotoxicity and you're draining your cell energy, you're going to have unresolved inflammation. And pregnenolone, as much as it can help you, is not a magic pill. It's not a permanent. Sue, hi Sue, I hope you're well. Orly, I carry my pink salt everywhere you go. So you and I can be both weird together. It's funny how being healthy means you have to be weird. And I always remember the saying, like, instead of asking, the question of why is it so expensive, the food that's good and tastes yummy and is good quality food, start asking the question, why is crappy food so cheap? It's kind of the same thing. Instead of, asking the question of, why are these health nuts, extra fickle about the things they do, you should be asking about why are the people that are so unhealthy not concerned about making healthy choices. Hi Joel, eating my way to health. Good, feeling so much better. Merry Christmas to you. Thank you, Cheryl. Merry Christmas to you as well. I think that's it. So if there's no more questions, I'll make an effort to do this once a week. Just put up some topics that you'd like me to talk about. Make sure, I know I haven't been Johnny on the spot as much as I could be. I have a lot of interviews coming up. I have an interview with the guy from US Enzymes, Jason. I think it's this Friday, although last Friday and the Friday before and the Friday before that was supposed to be, but it hasn't worked out. But I'm excited to talk to him. I'm talking about to the guy from the Aura Ring coming up soon. And I have a lot of friends in the business that I can talk to and add a lot of value to you. So I'll be doing that. Make sure I'll be doing my Facebook Lives and answering your questions. You're welcome, Rosberg Developments. I'm glad you got a lot of value out of it. And then lastly, I always say, and Liz, we gotta get together with you soon too. So I'm excited to start to get the ball rolling for you as well. And I appreciate you, and I love doing these talks anyways. So I'm selfish. I do them for me because it makes me feel good. Although I do them for you because I know it helps. But also, I always say to people, if you're ready, it's 2018 coming along. And if you're ready to really get your life back and you're frustrated because the doctors are looking at you like you're normal and there's nothing wrong with you and you need to go on, antidepressants or anxiety medications and you think you've done a lot of things, but you haven't looked at your genetics, you haven't done a Dutch test, You didn't do before and afters. You didn't figure out the basics in terms of inflammation and your sleeping patterns and your glucose levels and your activity levels and your perceived levels of stress and reframing how you process information. Those are the magic sort of bullets that you need to fix, and I can help you. So if you're serious about that, what I'll do is I'll put a link to this for a 45-minute consult, and we'll do 3 things. Number 1, we'll get real clear on where you are with your health and what's not working and where you want to be. Number 2, we'll talk about the genetic component and what family predisposition you may not be looking at that is impacting your ability to get better. And the third thing is to look at the environment, the genetic component, to see how those are creating that perfect storm. And I'll get a link to you. There's a couple more questions here. Is Celtic sea salt okay versus pink salt? As long as it is not dried on a screen and it's air dried and it's good quality stuff, yeah, I don't think it's a problem. But this pink salt, I mean, it really tastes awesome. I mean, it tastes so good. What I can do is I can give you guys a link to that too, to buy that. And I'm a real nerd. I give that away for holiday presents. A girl on my soccer team's dad was telling me how she's gluten reactive and has gluten sensitivity, and sometimes she has gut issues. And I told her, like, 'cause she's always sweating, I said, how's her salt intake? And he looked at me like, well, salt's not good. So we had a Christmas party, and the girls were doing like they call it a white elephant, where they give each other presents and they figure it out for each other. And I brought like the pink salt for the guy to give to his daughter. So that's me. Food sensitivity test, ? I don't know what the question is, Orly. I do food sensitivity tests, yes. I see, again, tests that do the Acth Test. Those are BS tests. Those aren't testing for immunoglobulins, IgA and IgG. Those are testing for just basic, put your cells in a petri dish and see if there's any type of reaction. And, we're going to have histamine reactions with methylation problems, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a food reactivity. And you're sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater saying, oh, you have this sensitivity, when it's not a true sensitivity. Rosberg, do you do consultant? Yes, overseas. Yes, I absolutely do. I have people in Australia already. I have a couple people in US, in Canada, and all over the world. I actually had a consult today with someone from Budapest. Great guy. Hope he's listening. So yes, I do. I live in Australia to help me, because most practitioners here don't believe in it. Yes, most practitioners here don't believe in it either. So I'll put the link in there, Rosberg, and then we will, I know that's not your name, but we will, or maybe that's your last name or first name, and we will do a consult. Robin's from Australia too. Trina, do you have Epstein-Barr? That's not for me then. Tim, it's good. Celtic sea is air dried, so good. So yes, you can do that. What is the problem when the least little bit of salt makes you swell? Probably crappy salt. I don't know. Maybe you have an aldosterone problem, adrenal problems again. Maybe you're eating a lot of processed, canned, packaged food that already has a lot of sodium in it. Maybe the liver's not doing a good job. A lot of stuff. ADH. Yes. Well, good, Tim. Maybe you can host this. Anyways, I'm going to run. I hope you guys felt that was valuable and healthy, and you got a lot of helpful tips out of that. I wish you guys Merry Christmas. I don't think I'll be doing another Facebook Live before then, but maybe after then, shortly thereafter. And I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.